Hello, I'm Charlie Albone, and welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of That's How We Grow, in partnership with STIHL Garden Power Tools. Gardening brings with it so many rewards, from creating beautiful spaces to watching amazing plants, fruits, and vegetables thrive and grow. Seeing a garden that you've nurtured and cared for being enjoyed by others is a very satisfying feeling. My guest today is an Australian food icon, a widely recognised amazing chef. You probably have one of his cookbooks in your kitchen. Yes, it's Matt Moran. A love for fresh food and local produce, Matt knows the benefits of looking after a beautiful veggie garden. For me, it's hard to beat the taste and satisfaction of freshly picked fruits and vegetables from your garden. They are always the most delicious, the more juicy and the most rewarding. To care for the plants and then see a beautiful crop grow, well, words struggle to describe the satisfaction. For Matt Moran, he needs to grow large amounts of seasonal crops to supply his many diners every single night. How does he work with his team to deliver this large quantity and ensure amazing consistency throughout? Well, hopefully Matt will have a couple of amazing cooking tips to share with us as well. Let's jump into the veggie plot with Matt and see what we can cook up. My guest today is a world-renowned chef with about 1 million restaurants, and I'm lucky to say that I have eaten at quite a few of them. There's Aria, Chiswick, River Bar, North Bondi Fish, Barangaroo House, Opera Bar, Chop House, and a new pub called the Rock Lee. He's also an author who, let's face it, has a cookbook in every household in Australia. He's just finished up on one of my favourite shows, Australian Baking. Oh, it was a good show, Matt, and you've left us. Everybody, welcome Matt Moran to That's How We Grow. How are you, Matt?
I'm well, mate. I'm very well. Gee, I tell you what, if I had 1 million restaurants, I'd be in trouble because there's no way I'd be able to staff them at the moment.
Yeah, it's a trouble, isn't it? How does somebody get into, well, first of all, being a chef and then into owning so many restaurants and doing so many different things with their time?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting thing. Look, I had a farming background when I was very young, and then we moved off the farms, lived in the western suburbs of Sydney, pretty rough sort of area out around Blacktown, and wasn't that academic, which is bizarre because I've got 2 very academic kids, one doing medicine and the other one doing school, and I would have done anything just to leave school. You know, I would have been a motor mechanic or a painter or whatever. I just wanted to get out of school. My father wouldn't let me unless I had an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. And I started baking a little bit in a I think it was a Woolworths or something, I think from memory, or something like that. It was like a bakery in a supermarket for work experience. And then I started working on weekends in an RSL, and I kind of thought, geez, this cooking thing's all right, but wasn't really that passionate about it, didn't really care about it because, everything came out of a packet or a cool room or, bread rolls were put on a tray and just baked. We didn't really actually make them. And then started looking for an apprenticeship, and I would have gone for about 20 interviews before anyone gave me a job. I was only a 15-year-old kid.
Wow.
And a big kid. I used to play a lot of sport, and everyone used to say, look, you don't really have much experience, and we're not looking for someone like you. And I remember, I might have been about the 18th or 19th, one guy said to me, he goes, look, if the first 10 don't work out, we'll give you a call. And I was pretty down after that one. Yeah. And I had a interview in a place called La Berheline, which is on the north side, which little did I know, but was probably in the top sort of 10 restaurants in the country. And I found out where it was from Blacktown. It was about an hour and a half. And I said to my father, look, I don't really want to go for this interview. I was, pretty beaten down. I thought, there's no way I'm going to get it. And he said, look, you've made the interview, you're going whether you like it or not. Yeah. And I walked in there and I saw the owner, who was also the head chef, Michael DeLawrence, who I owe a lot to. And I saw a piece of paper and it had about 20 names on it, and they all had crosses next to them, and then my name. And I thought, this is my opportunity. So I just absolutely bluffed my way, and I said, look, I know that you're probably not looking for someone like me. I'm only 15. I don't really have much experience, but I said, I promise you, if you give me a go, you won't be sorry. And because I said that, he actually gave me a trial for 3 days, and then he rang me on the Sunday night and said, look, you can leave school tomorrow. So I left school and I stayed there for 4.5 years. I was actually head chef there by the time I was 18, believe it or not.
Wow, that's amazing.
And, but it was different back in those days, Charlie, is where, I saw my apprenticeship as my education. basically. So, I went from school to working 6 days a week. We were working anywhere between 80, 90 hours a week. So if you put that in time, I did 2 apprenticeships really in 4 years, which, obviously gave me the knowledge to learn how to cook. And it was very French and very classic, and I learned all the, French techniques. And strangely enough, at college, I pretty much topped college all the way through because, one, I was working in a very good restaurant.
Yes.
And we learned everything, the proper way. And then I have to be honest, I reckon it was in the first week of starting La Belle, I went home and I said to my father used to have to come pick me up every night at midnight because I couldn't get home.
Yeah.
And he said to me, is this what you really want to do? And I said, Dad, you don't get it. And, I'm a little bit obsessive compulsive and, I just absolutely become addicted to it. And I fell in love. It's been, one of my greatest love affairs in life. But I never really envisaged owning restaurants because chefs didn't own restaurants back in those days. They were restaurateurs. And I think, I'm pretty ambitious, and it just sort of changed as it went along. And, I never thought I'd ever be in this position. But, at the same time, I opened my first restaurant when I was only 22. So
that's amazing.
Somebody had to progress. And I'll tell you what, there's not a day that goes by that I'm so grateful that I chose what I did, because my position's changed a hell of a lot. I've got 700 or 800 staff these days. And but at the same time, I love every minute of it, and I love being part of it, and I love building things. And I keep thinking that I'm going to slow down, but, I keep buying more stuff and doing more stuff. So, look, I'm very grateful, and I love it. And,
what amazing support from your dad to come and pick you up every night at midnight and travel an hour and a half back home. That's incredible. Yeah,
look, an hour and a half by train, I used to get there. And look, it was probably not quite an hour, and it's probably about an hour to get home.
Yeah.
And he did that for a long time. I think he was more... My brother was a little bit more academic. He's a year older, and I was a little bit of a bad boy and, played more sport. And I think he was more worried if I quit, then I couldn't go back to school and I'd have nothing. But he didn't quite understand well, he does now, obviously. But, I'm very grateful for what he'd done in those early years.
And you mentioned you started on a farm. Is that where your love of food and growing vegetables and things like that's come from?
Yeah, look, you know what? That's a really great point coming from you, being the ultimate gardener. Look, I had a great upbringing, in my early years until I was about 8, and then Dad bought a little farm when I was in my teens, and I used to go down there on weekends. I don't have one of those beautiful stories about the romance of, produce and farms and veggie gardens and then, into the restaurants. It was the other way around. There was a farming background when I was young, and the older I got, the more passionate I got about farmers, mainly because I know how hard farmers did it, and I know how hard my parents did it, and I know my parents had a dairy farm that they never had a day off for 5 years, and drought, floods, and I was lucky enough to get involved in the family farm, which was a new one actually. We bought it 21 years ago. My dad, his brother, and myself. My father's since retired, and I've bought them all out. So it's still Moran family farm, but it's actually my farm.
Yep.
And I think by seeing farmers and loving what they do, and let's face it, if it wasn't for farmers, I wouldn't be the chef that I am, because if we didn't have this incredible produce, we wouldn't be able to have this incredible food. So it's sort of like the chicken or the egg, and it's really sort of brought me back into farming a lot more, and I love it more and more. And I grow veggies. I have an ambition to set up a market farm on the farm. And we obviously farm sheep, cattle, and I've got pigs too, which I love. But I bought a pub next to the farm about 10 minutes away, and the strategy behind that was to obviously bring a town back to life a little bit and put a bakery and a general store and a pub and beautiful accommodation and things like that. But also for the guys that work at the pub to actually work at the farm and vice versa. So they actually sort of, they've started to work together. I'm growing stuff that only for myself, but, I'm not there all the time, so I get the chefs to go out there and raid it every now and then.
Yep.
Which is great. And, it's important, I think, for chefs to actually see where stuff comes from.
And how hard it is to grow it as well. It takes a long time to grow a cauliflower and a broccoli, and to ruin it, it's just devastating.
Funny you say that, because I've got a heap of brassica, because we're cold country.
Yep.
and nothing else will grow in winter because we get a bit of frost and snow. So I planted brassica at my restaurant at Chiswick, which I've got a little market garden out the back.
Yes.
And I've planted brassica in the farm, and it's just amazing how far the farm is behind because of the weather. Obviously is very different up there. But you know, I've got cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbages. I've got all that growing at the moment, which I can't wait.
What's your favourite thing to grow?
Oh, look, anything that I can eat. Look, I'm that sort of person. I've got a veggie farm at home too. I live on the coast in Sydney, but I've got a little veggie garden that I've sort of claimed as my own, and it's the same gardener that actually helps me there that does Chiswick, Peter Hatfield, who's just absolutely brilliant, and I love him. And during those sort of spring, summer months, I'm growing all those things that you use a lot of. Things like cucumbers and zucchinis and cherry tomatoes and normal tomatoes and things that sort of grow that you can use all the time. There's nothing better for me to actually, go and buy a piece of protein from the butcher shop and not knowing what I'm going to get, just go in there and see what's fantastic, and then come home and just go down to the garden and raid whatever I can. There's something about, and I know I'm talking to the wrong person, but I know that when you grow something and the story behind it and the way you've nurtured it and the way that you've looked after it and whether you're a farmer too and you've bred something and you hear that story from whoever you're getting it off or you do it yourself and you can relay that story, I don't care what anyone says. If you know the romance and something about where the produce comes from and you can tell a story, it just tastes bloody a lot better.
It sure does. It's funny when you grow your own food and you obviously do it on an enormous scale, but for the home gardener, when you're growing your own food, you're not going to really become sustainable. So you do fall in love with what you're growing and you you really make sure you cook it well and cook it properly. And you have to make a celebration of it when you're cooking it and have family around and truly enjoy it.
But also you've got to use it. That's the great thing. And what I love about being a chef and a restaurateur is about seasonality. And, gone are the days, Charlie, that my restaurants, use asparagus when it's in season, then we start buying it from bloody Peru or Mexico. That's a no-go zone these days. I love the idea of using produce that's in season, and when it's gone, you look forward to getting it back again. And, whatever you're growing in the garden and whether you like it or not, you've got to use it. And to me, that's all about sustainability and that's all about, and doing the right thing.
Do you ever have any time where a crop finishes earlier than you'd like and you'd have to quickly change the menu?
Look, that does happen all the time. In my case, I have things that, I might be away, I might be shooting, I might be traveling or whatever else, and I've just got too much of it. And I suppose that's when the chef thing kicks in. And, if I've got too many cucumbers, I'll pickle them. If I've got too many tomatoes, I'll make a tomato relish or, kumquats. I get kumquats. It's a good story, actually. I've got a kumquat tree and I always pick it every year and I get so many kumquats, but I don't get enough to make a heap of marmalade. And there's a lady next door across the road from me, and I live on the coast, so, you get the beautiful salt spray and everything. And she's got these organic oranges. And I remember saying to my gardener one day, I need some bloody oranges. I'll have to go and get it. He goes, hey, over the road's got oranges, if it's over the fence, it's yours. And I was like, oh, look, I can't do that. So I actually walked over. I know her, and I walked over and I tapped on the door and she's like, oh, Matt, what can I do? And I said, hey, look, I've just noticed you've got all these oranges. How about I do you a deal? I said, if you can give me 2 kilos of your beautiful oranges, I'll give you a jar of marmalade. She's like, I'm not bloody stupid. Of course I bloody will. So there's a little bit of contra there too, which is great.
Yeah, that works well. At the moment, I'm madly juicing lemons because we have a lemon tree that just has got so much fruit on it and it goes off before you can use it. So I'm juicing them, putting them in ice cube trays and emptying them into polythene bags. So
what you can do, and, it's the time of year that you always sort of do it, is you can make preserved lemon.
Oh, yeah.
And preserved lemon is one of the easiest things to do. You just need big airtight containers and you cut the orange into, you don't cut it all the way into quarters, but you just leave a part of the navel at the end. And what you do is then you sprinkle salt in it everywhere, heaps of it, and then you put it into the jars, and you just keep squashing more and more lemons into it, and all the lemon juice comes out, mixes with the salt, and and then you can put a bay leaf in there, it's a bit of herbs in there if you want, and it just preserves the lemon. So you've got all that juice that you're actually not wasting, but you're actually not wasting the skin either, and you end up making beautiful Moroccan curry with preserved lemon.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to do that because I've got bags and bags of them at the moment. Absolutely. So you mentioned you've got a gardener, and obviously you would do, having growing so much produce and having so much property. Do you get your hands dirty as well?
Well, yeah. So in Sydney, Pete Hatfield does the Art Gallery in New South Wales for me, and also Chiswick at Mullara. And then he does my house in Gordons Bay, which, he looks after that. And I sit together a little bit. But when it comes to the farm, it's too far for him to go. So the farm is actually me. So I do get my hands dirty. I do have a farm manager that he sort of helps me every now and then by pulling things out. And I've also got the pub manager and the chefs there that sort of come out and do bits and pieces. But look, it's my garden at the farm, and look, I'm loving it. I'm not much of a gardener, but I'm getting better, Charlie. I'm getting better, and I think that's with anything that you're actually quite passionate about and you love it. I obviously know what's in season. I know what I should be planting. And I want it to be as organic as I possibly can. Well, it pretty much is. I've got sprinkler systems set up and all that sort of stuff. So I'm actually enjoying it a lot more. It's just getting the time when I'm up there, because I'm, either at the pub or, I'm marking lambs tomorrow.
Right.
So, and we've got a bit of a competition on how many lambs we've got. This is our second year for these ewes, so they're going to produce more lambs, and I think it's only 200 ewes in that mob that we're doing. We're all having a guessing game, and everyone keeps saying to me, "Well, what are we going to win if we get the number right?" And I go, "Well, it won't be a leg of lamb."
So does the menu come first, or does it growing vegetables come first? So do you think of a menu and then plan for it, or do you just say, "This is what we've got. Let's make this"?
Yeah, look, it's interesting because I obviously have head chefs in all my venues, and then I have Laura, who's been with me 15 years. She sort of sits in between me and the head chefs, even though I've got a direct relationship with them. So we always try and change the menu seasonally, so 4 times a year. And we always take in consideration that some things may not last that whole period, or, something might be damaged or whatever else, so we can always just change it quickly. But we're always sort of planning ahead, and same with the market garden at Chiswick, we're always planting. Whatever we're growing in there, it has to be on the menu. Like broad beans are just about to come on, so they've got to be on the menu. Obviously, it doesn't supply the restaurant fully because the restaurant's too big, but it just gives an indication of Taylor, who's the head chef there, that he has to abide by what's in season. That's what he's got to use. So, when it comes to protein, obviously we choose different proteins to obviously mix it up. But the menu is really determined by what is in season and what vegetables and herbs and things are around.
So what would your top 3 vegetables be? Like, what do you really get excited for? Like, knowing they're coming up, and you're gonna be putting them into the restaurants.
Look, I only did it the other day, actually. I was at the farm and I had a beautiful little cauliflower. And I hated cauliflower as a kid because it just used to be boiled, and it was boiled within a millimetre of its life until it was all mushy and horrible, and sometimes you used to put a Mornay sauce over it. Is where, to me, cauliflower is one of the most diverse vegetables you can use. You can cut it in steaks, you can roast it. I bake it whole in a cassoulet dish with a little bit of olive oil and seasoning. And then I let it. Then I take the lid off and let it get a bit brown and under the grill. And then I'll put some anchovies, some capers, and lots of burnt butter. So butter, let it get brown and baste it and that, and then squeeze the lemon juice. So you've got this beautiful sort of acidic dressing with the nuttiness of the burnt butter. To me, it's one of my favorite, and lots of parsley at the end. It's one of my favorite things to do. So cauliflower is probably it. But I also I love cabbage, and cabbage is obviously in season now.
Yes.
And I love making coleslaws and things like that. If I'm going to do a Boston butter pork, which is the shoulder of the pork, and slow roast it when my son's mates come around, they all love that sort of thing. 'Cause anything sort of massive cuts they love because they're growing boys.
Yes.
But I don't mind actually getting a little bit of like a Savoy cabbage and cutting it into wedges, and a little bit of hot oil in a pan, olive oil, good olive oil, and roast it. Right. And do something similar that you could do with the cauliflower or not. You can put like a gremolata, which is a parsley, lemon juice and garlic over the top of it. So you've got the fattiness of the oil and the cooking of the cabbage, and I let the cabbage brown on it. So I move it in the pan while I'm roasting it, so you get this beautiful brown crunchiness on it, and then a bit of gremolata over the top, so you get that acid with the fattiness of the cabbage and the oil, and it just balances it out really well. So I'd have to say cabbage. Now let me think of something that's not in season for the other time of the year.
It's funny you say that about cabbage. I've started barbecuing purple cabbage, and it works really well. Like a mustard sauce on there and some lemon juice. It's lovely, Yeah, 100%.
Cabbage is so versatile too, and brassica are always so versatile. Brussels sprouts, I hated them as kids because they were boiled for, my nan, God bless her, she died in 2012 at 99, and she was a very country cook, and I used to go up there and she could cook a leg of lamb on a Sunday, and the leg of lamb used to be so overcooked, and I could never say anything because she didn't care anyway, who she was cooking for. I know I was a chef back then those days, but I reckon if the leg of lamb went on 5 hours before it all meant to eat it on a Sunday lunch, I reckon the Brussels sprouts went on Thursday. They were smelly and grey and horrible, and I hated them. But, I love Brussels sprouts, and I just roast them with some in some oil with some raisins and capers and some, even if it's just a French classic dressing, something to get some acid in there and not overcook them. But I also love Brussels sprouts just chiffonade, like cut really finely like you would with a cabbage, and grated Reggiano or Parmesan all the way through it, and then, some parsley and just like an apple cider vinegar and really good olive oil, and maybe some peas. But, to me, that it's like a Brussels sprout slaw. I love that because I find the flavour quite intense in a Brussels sprout. So they're quite versatile. I've just given you 3 veggies. But, I've got to say that, I love things like zucchinis in summer, because you can do so much with them every day. Zucchinis, as grow like bloody, anything. And, salads, you can pickle them and they're quite versatile. And when you've actually got a good cucumber, I said cucumber, didn't I? Not zucchini.
You said zucchini, yeah.
Zucchini, right? Zucchini, you don't really pickle them. But no, cucumber I meant. God, what am I saying?
Yep.
So cucumbers, because you use them in salads, you can pickle them, and they're very versatile, and you know how quick they bloody grow.
Yeah, very quick.
Overnight, they're growing 3 inches. It's just insane. I've got to put a slow film on one of those and watch it
like
grow.
A time lapse.
Yeah, time lapse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So do you plant any particular varieties? Because when you go to the shops, it's just a variety that is made for long lasting.
Telegraph and Lebanese. Yeah, look, I do, and I particularly do with things like tomatoes.
Yeah.
We've got these little blush cherry tomatoes that we grow at Chiswick every year, and we get like 150 kilos over the course of their lifespan.
Yeah.
And it's not a massive patch, but we get these massive bowls. People come and we pickle them, we pick them and we just use them in the salads. And I like things that you don't have to wait forever, and you can use them and then they sort of replenish themselves. So you've always got them for those couple of months.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How do you get the best sort of flavour out of homegrown food? We always say it tastes better at home, but how do you maximise that flavour, I guess?
Try not to do too much to it. That's the simple thing. Is simplicity is not a bad thing in my world. Mm-hmm. Like I said, cabbage just roasted, cauliflower just roasted whole. Try and keep it as a whole piece. Like, I understand things like an eggplant that you might roast it and cut it out and make a baba ganoush, or you might sort of take the middle out and put it into a curry or something like that. But to me, there's nothing better than an eggplant that's cut in half with a beautiful miso glaze, so you can actually identify what it is.
Yep.
And simplicity is a great thing. If it's even tomatoes, like a great beefsteak tomato or a heirloom, and just roasted with a little bit of salt and olive oil. Like, to me, that's just the best. I try not to complicate things. I love making a vegetable curry every now and then. I understand that it turns into something else, but if I'm going to be at home, and I'll be really honest, and I'm going to cook for friends, I like the table to be, full of vegetables and salads, which I love to do, and then I always cook a big piece of protein. And why I do a lot of salads and normally warm salads or cold salads is because I can do it all beforehand. So when people turn up, I'm actually not a slave in the kitchen. All I've got to do is cook the protein. And I like to see a table full of food, but I also like it to be seen. You can identify with whatever it is.
Yeah.
And even things like, slow roasted carrots, for hours. Another thing that I love to do is sweet potato, and I don't know whether a lot of people know this and understand this, but sweet potato has got this incredible, sweetness to it. And the longer you cook it, and what I tend to do is cook a whole sweet potato just on a tray, oiled tray, kept whole, and I cook it at about 100 degrees, 110 degrees for hours and hours and hours. And the little points where the root systems come out, what happens, and I've got this on video actually, and it's absolutely amazing. And I had these beautiful sweet potatoes, and I cooked them for about 6 hours, and it looks like honey is escaping out of the sweet potato because all those sugars, start to sort of break down, and they're not caramelized, but they just start oozing out onto the tray. And what I tend to do is just then cut the sweet potato down lengthways, and I push it out so you can see all the beautiful, and it changes colour because you can see the darkness in it. And then I get that little bit of honey stuff that's sort of oozed out, and I just dribble it over the top, and then I put a tzatziki on top of it. So you got this beautiful sweetness of the sweet potato, but then you have this incredible acid of the yogurt and the cucumber and garlic, obviously, and that just sort of gives it a beautiful balance. That's something I do a lot, and people come in and go, and they see it before I put a tzatziki on it, and they see, oh, he's just boiled a sweet potato. But when they eat it and I explain the syrup and the sugars that come out of it, they're like, oh my God. And they think that I've poured honey over it. They really do. And I sit there and, and then show them the video and go, no, there's no honey on it. But, that's one of the great things about vegetables.
You're obviously a chef who still cooks at home. You imagine the RSL chefs go home and they just have a tin of beans. Is there any time that you just have a tin of beans where you just can't be bothered to cook?
Oh, mate, I wouldn't have a tin of beans. Look, Charlie, as
like
I said
Heinz
earlier,
beans, like the good ones, not the cheap ones.
Look, I love what I do, and I may not be cooking at Aria, 5 nights a week, and it's a young man's sport, but I'm heavily involved in the menus, and I'm heavily involved. Of course, I own the restaurants, and I love the chefs, and I love talking to them about food, and I'm very passionate about food, and if I couldn't cook, it'd be the end of my life. I love cooking, and my great escape is whether I'm cooking at the farm or whether I'm cooking at home. I still love that aspect of it, and I'm very passionate about it, and I'm so bloody grateful that I've got such a passion.
How are you not an enormous fat chef then if you cook and eat so much?
You know what? I've always said I train to eat.
Yeah,
and that's just it. I don't drink alcohol. 5 days of the week. And never have for 30 years, unless I'm away somewhere. So if anyone ever sees me, on holidays in Cairns on a Tuesday night, yes, I'm having a beer. Yes, I'm allowed to. But I religiously try not to drink, in Sydney or when I'm working, during the week. And it's just something that I've always done. Yeah,
something I do as well, actually.
Yeah, and I think, look, I've got a lot of responsibility and I work pretty hard. So it's very hard to wake up with a hangover and not be able to perform. Yep. So that's crucial. And I've actually got a lot of injuries at the moment. I ripped my bicep on my right arm doing a bit of boxing and stuff, and I've just had some cortisone injections, which has actually helped. And I went fishing with my good mate Gordon Ramsay last month up in Iceland, and I fell on the boat and I've got a bursa on my elbow. So I've got a few injuries, but I feel a lot better today because I had a couple of cortisone injections and I feel as though I'll be back into it. So last 4 weeks have been hard. So I've just been sitting on a bike and just sweating it out on a spin bike. But yeah, look, I try and train, as much as I possibly can.
So you can eat as much as you can.
So I can eat as much as I possibly can. It's really important.
Yeah. So when you do get out in the garden, tell me a bit about that. So do you enjoy being out in the garden? Does it help relax you? Because you're obviously incredibly busy.
Yeah, look, I have certain things in my life that that do relax me. And I have to say, I drive through those front gates at the farm and, you know, a different Matt Moran comes out, there's no question. You know, for many, many years, I told them that I didn't have phone reception. So some people still think that. So, you know, if they don't get a phone call, they but yeah, I'm a different person. I'm much more relaxed, and I'm much more relaxed whether it comes to farming or whatever I'm doing there. Like, you know, I'm leaving this afternoon. So as I said, we're marking lambs for the next couple of days. And, you know, and I'll spend a bit of time in the garden. I've got one bed that I've got to rip out. So I've got 8 beds there and they're all raised. And I've got one that I've got to rip out. It's actually under a bay leaf and it doesn't get enough sun, which I've just realised. Yeah. So I've got to sort of think of something. Well, you, Charlie, come on, you're the genius. You're the guy. What should I put? It's cold country, right? So we do get a little bit of frost. Yep. But frost is probably still going to go for another month. And it's sort of, it gets a little bit of sun, but not very much because the sun's pretty low at the moment. So there's a lot of shade. What can I put there that's going to be hearty and grow? Well, if you're looking to eat something, there's really not that much. Sadly, you need a lot of sun. So maybe consider using it for some companion planting. Yeah. Some things that you might be able to use, say, nasturtiums, things like that. Although they like a bit more sun, they will cope in the shade. You can even do some native violets. You know, you can eat the little flowers that pop up on those as well. So maybe do that, and that will introduce some beneficial insects to the garden. And then, you know, if you're not going to produce a lot from it, then maybe look at doing something else with it would be my advice. Yeah, the one next to it that doesn't get a lot of shade, and I hadn't been there for 2 weeks and I came back and the rocket went nuts. Yeah. And the red vein sorrel just went nuts. And I was like, wow, that's only 3 feet from there. I had some topsoy and some other bits and pieces in that corner that didn't really work. Yep. But, you know, rocket, and I know rocket loves sun, but the rocket just went nuts at the farm. I don't know why. Probably the drop in temperature. Yeah. Just kicked it along. So your tool shed must be pretty impressive. Have you got a lot of hand tools? Are you a power tools kind of guy? Yeah, look, I'm a farmer also. So, you know, we have a machinery shed. You know, I've got lots of motorbikes. That's one of my other passions, and tractors and the old shearing shed, which was probably built in 1870. We've converted that into a tool shed. So, I've got everything you need, you know, and obviously living in the country, we need firewood. So we use chainsaws and power tools and you know, vices and things like that. But yeah, it's not a bad shed. And I've got a big shearing shed next to it that's obviously much more modern these days because, you know, shearers weren't really thought of much, even though my ancestors were shearers, weren't thought of a lot. And you know, you've got all the heights and things like that are very, really important. So it's a bit easier on them. Yeah, it sounds like you've got the ultimate place up there. It's like my dream. A good, Mate, good shed, good veggie patch. I love it. And I've got beautiful animals. Yeah. And, you know, they're just, you know, gorgeous. There's nothing better. It's very wet at the moment. We've never seen a season like this, and it's very hard to get around in a four-wheel drive. I've got to use a little Polaris thing that I scoot around in because it's that wet. We put a post in for a fence the other day, or Brendan did, my manager, who I love. He just put in a post about 4 feet into the ground, and he said it just slid down because it's so wet. Yeah. So the actual the water table is just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it ever. You know, we've had more than double the rainfall, our average rainfall this year already. And last year, it started raining after the drought in February 20, and it hasn't stopped since. How has that affected the veggies you grow for your restaurants? I mean, that must make it very difficult. Yeah, it does. And this is another thing. You know, I'm part of a foundation called Thankful for Farmers, which I sort of helped start, which is, you know, looking after farmers in many different ways. You know, people think, oh, well, the drought's broken and, you know, that's fine. But, you know, you only have to look at our food bowl in Sydney, which is, you know, the Nepean Hawkesbury River, and, you know, Windsor and all those market gardens. And, you know, they've been wiped out so many times. You know, as everyone knows, you know, you're paying $10 for an iceberg lettuce. That's not because someone's gouging. That's because it's just none. It's just not there, yeah. And, you know, you head up the coast and a lot of our stuff is growing on the coast. You only have to fly up there to see how much of our veggies and stuff are growing up. You know, Ballina and Lismore and places like that, you know, they've been unbelievably affected. So it's not just drought. It's you know, heavy rain can kill a crop. Floods can kill a crop. Mice can kill crops. It's just, the farmers just do it so bloody tough, and we've really got to look after them and appreciate them as much as we can. And growers, veggie growers, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really important.
Do you use the animal manure from your farm on your veggie patch?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You'd have a lot of it, I would assume.
I do have a little bit, and we have sheep under the shearers shearing shed that we get. Pigs, I don't. It's a bit harder for the pigs because the pigs are a bit friendly and they try and knock you over and. And I can just see myself bending over, getting some pig poo, and one of them just bloody ramming me, just for the laughs, I reckon. And cattle, yes, of course. So what I'm actually finding, I've got some great mates that live in Rockley where the pub is. Jude and John, and John's a horticulturalist, so he comes out quite often with his bags, and he gets under the shearing shed and fills his bags up with manure. And of course, I use a little bit in the garden and compost and things like that. And, obviously you see massive results too. But, I grew up on a dairy farm, and, when I was very young, from the age of 5, I think, to the age of 8, I think it was, 9. And it was at Badgerys Creek. And Badgerys Creek, if you know anything about it, it's where the airport's going. But for many, many years, it was all market gardens. And a lot of Maltese and a lot of Italians. And I remember vividly... obviously, dairy farms, cattle are in pens. When you're milking them, they poo everywhere. There's manure everywhere. Yeah. And this guy, I can't remember his name. I think he was Maltese. And my dad's name's Jim. And he'd come over in the afternoon. I'd hear him yell out to Dad, "Hey, Jimmy, got any manure?" "Hey, Jimmy, got any manure?" And Dad was, of course, because he was a tomato grower. Yeah. So he would get all the manure from the dairy farm and go and use it for, his tomatoes. But strangely enough, I never remember him coming over with tomatoes. So I don't know whether he'd still be around, but buddy, you owe me some tomatoes from all that manure for all those years.
So do you have a favourite thing to grow? I know you have lots of things that you like to eat, but is there something you really enjoy growing?
Look, I think things that are a little bit unusual, like, not a lot of people know how to grow or how Brussels sprouts grow. And to look at a Brussels sprout plant, it's pretty bloody impressive. I love cherry tomatoes and growing them in, really high lattice. Yes. And so they're really easy to pick. Broad beans I love. I love things that I can just walk out and because they're all at different stages, a tomato and a broad bean, ones will be ready to be picked, one won't. Beans. And I love walking out in the garden at Chiswick and actually I get into trouble all the time because I pick things off the garden. I just eat it. Yeah. I can't help myself. I don't know. It's something about, looking at something growing and picking off yourself and eating it. You just get excited. Do you?
We've spoken a lot about vegetables. Are you a big herb grower as well?
Yeah. Look, all the hard herbs I grow all the time. And they're all thyme and sage and rosemary. Parsley, because I use so much parsley all the time. I don't really grow a lot of coriander and dill. The soft herbs, not as much. I think you've got to put a bit more time and effort into those, don't you?
Oh, I don't. I'm a coriander makes me feel sick, to be honest. Really? So I don't really grow. I just can't stand the taste.
Oh, it's because you come from the Northern Hemisphere.
That's
mate.
right.
They're not used to coriander. Cilantro, I think you guys.
Cilantro, yeah. But a lot of people find that it goes to seed really quickly, so you just need to constantly sow seed.
No, the great thing about coriander is that when it goes to seed, you actually pick the seeds, and Taylor does this at Chiswick all the time. Yeah. So he picks all the coriander seeds and then he pickles them. Right. And then he uses them on the off season, because you still get the same flavour in the seed as what you do in the plant. So he pickles them, so you get these beautiful pickled coriander seeds, and he uses them. He gets jars and jars. And look, don't get me wrong, it's a bloody hard job and it's time consuming. But to me, that's if you can't keep up with your coriander and then you pick your seeds, you can use it at a different time of year.
Well, if it tastes the same, it sounds disgusting.
Mate, how can you have a curry without having coriander?
Look, I don't mind it in things. It's just the smell of the leaf, I guess.
You'd be surprised, Charlie, how many people actually say that they're allergic to it. And they just say that so they don't get it. And they're obviously, look, maybe there are one or two people that are. Most people I don't think are allergic to coriander and nothing else. They just don't want the flavour. Is there anything you don't like to grow or eat? No, I'll have a crack at anything. Yeah. baby turtle in Japan didn't go down that well one night with my daughter. You know what? Maybe because it's my past at the Parramatta RSL, I'm not particularly keen on raw red capsicum.
Right.
I'll eat it. I'll eat it. But, you used to throw it on everything, salads and steaks and whatever you could. And I could never really understand it. I don't mind it in a ratatouille and cooked, but raw red capsicum as a garnish, oh, man, you'd be fired if you did it in my kitchen.
And I guess I'll ask you a final question. If someone is looking to getting into becoming a chef, what advice would you have them, and would you point them in a sort of start growing your own food kind of direction?
Yeah, look, I say this all the time, and obviously I met a lot of young kids that want to be chefs and, as a mentor or whatever it is. And, there's no such thing as getting there, becoming successful and rich, as you see on, the TV shows and whatever else, and you see these celebrity chefs and whatever else. It's a hard slog. And time is knowledge, so you've got to put a lot of time in it to actually learn it. You can't learn how to cook and learn everything about it in 1, 2, 5, 10 years. I've been doing it now for, God, you don't want to know, Charlie, but over 35 years, and I'm the tip of the iceberg. I'm still learning, and that's the great thing about my industry, is that you're always learning. Do it because you fall in love with it. Yeah. It's too bloody hard to do it if you just want to make a buck, because you won't. All the successful chefs are guys that are really, they're a chef. They love it. They love what they do. They're very passionate about it, very passionate about produce. Do it for that reason. Do it for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons.
I would give the same advice to anyone who wants to get into landscaping as well. Yeah. It's a hard career. You've got to love it. Well, yeah,
absolutely.
And Matt, I know you're incredibly busy, so I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I'm sure the listeners have loved this one.
Mate, absolute pleasure, and good to see your face, buddy.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Yeah.
It is now time for our community questions, and we'll start with Erica from Brisbane. She says, "Hi Charlie, what a great podcast." Thank you, Erica. "I've started growing my own lettuce and other veggies since the prices went through the roof, and my lettuce has some bugs eating them. To be honest, they haven't grown strongly. I planted them in new potting mix and have watered them well. Any tips on how I can grow bumper lettuce and save some money?" Well, if you've got some bugs, there's a few things you can do to treat those. First of all, you can pick them off by hand. That works really well. You could also grow some companion planting around them, things like marigolds. So they'll actually attract the bugs to them instead of your lettuce, and then you can rip those out when they've finished and the bugs have gone elsewhere. If you have a huge infestation, you can make a mix of olive oil, water, and a couple of drops of detergent, and that will knock out a strong infestation of bugs. With lettuce, they need quite a lot of sun, and you need the soil to be quite full of organic matter. So potting mix probably isn't the right choice for you. You can get some potting mix, maybe mix a bit of cow manure through it, and that should do the trick. Virginia has sent through a question saying, "Hi Charlie, I've just discovered your podcast, and I've binge listened to them all. I hope you work out Maggie's burnt fig ice cream recipe." Well, I haven't done that, that's for sure, but I am certainly still buying it from the shop. "I've looked at several YouTube videos on citrus pruning, and they do a harsh prune, and the regrowth is prolific. Should I be doing this?" Well, that's a great question. If your citrus is no longer producing as many fruit as it has done, a really harsh prune will promote lots of growth. You may not get fruit that year, but you'll get a huge amount the following year. You can also do it if you're thinking about digging the tree up and moving it to another location. My final message is from James. Well, it's actually from James, who's a 5-year-old. Well, thanks, James. Your typing is excellent. I'm assuming that perhaps your grandma has sent this through. Oh, yes. He says he likes gardening with his grandma and his grandpa, which is great. But he gets bindies in the grass. So bindies are a bit of an issue. There are specific herbicides that work just on bindies, but you want to get to these before they come to flower, because once they've gone to flower, they grow to seed, and the seed is the thing that gets stuck in your foot. He's also asking about avocados, and they've got a Hass avocado, and what is the best place to plant it in the garden? Well, with a Hass, you'll need 2 avocados. You'll need type A and type B, so the flowers will cross-pollinate and you'll get fruit. If there is another one in the neighbourhood, that might do the trick. But imagine that this tree is going to get quite large, so you need to give it the space that it needs. Do you have a gardening question you'd like me to answer? Send an email to charlie@stihl.com.au. Well, all this talk about food today has me drooling. Matt Moran was amazing. It's great to hear his understanding and connection to local produce for the best flavours. If you want to grow veggies at home, particularly larger quantities, remember to plan your crops and how you're going to use or preserve them. Don't forget there's always going to be excess and you need to know what to do with it. When it comes to cooking, just keep it simple. Fresh produce is the way to go. And you need to garden and cook because you love it. It's as simple as that. I really enjoyed hearing Matt talk about his passion for cooking. Thanks for listening to That's How We Grow in partnership with STIHL Garden Power Tools. Need the tools to take on any garden challenge? Go to the STIHL website or head to your local STIHL dealer today. There are over 600 local dealers across Australia and you can find your local STIHL dealer on the website. On our next episode, I'll chat with Lee Sullivan. She's behind the very popular Instagram page, Urban Veggie Patch. Lee shares with her community great advice for growing vegetables at home and has a huge following. We'll cover topics including what vegetables to get started with in the garden and how you can save money with your own produce. As always, this episode will be around in 2 weeks' time.